As more and more Americans slip deeper into poverty as a result of this pandemic, congressional lawmakers, especially a bipartisan group of senators, have decided to offer up smaller and smaller versions of the COVID relief bill, which makes great content for our latest edition of The Dumb and the Feckless.
One of my prayers is that the Republicans will take back their party.
Things keep dripping out, drip, 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 and the truth comes out.
What's incredible is how self-congratulatory these senators are. Starting with Senator Joe Manchin, who decided to open a press briefing with this ridiculous bragging about, how difficult it is to come up with a solution, but here we are with it. But what is this so-called solution? Before we go to his video, let me just note that this bipartisan group unveiled one $748 billion package that includes new unemployment benefits, small business aid, and other programs that received broad bipartisan support. But that $748 billion price tag is significantly less than what the House passed through its HEROES Act, which of course would spend about $2.2 trillion. In fact, prior to the general election, Donald Trump himself had offered up $1.8 trillion. But now, of course, since he's been voted out, he has no incentive to keep pushing for a relief bill that actually makes any sense. And so what's the response to all of it? Well, every week we get another proposal by a bipartisan group of lawmakers that does not include direct checks to Americans. And to be quite honest with you, it doesn't even really rely on much in new spending. I'll get to those details in just a second. But before we get to Manchin, just remember this bill and the other bill that I'm gonna detail, complete horse crap. But here's Manchin bragging about it.
I know there's an awful lot of you thought that can't be done. You surely to goodness couldn't everything agreed on and put into a bill. Well, guess what? We did. There's the bill. And to make matters even better, we have two, because with every good negotiation, you want to make sure you've covered everything.
The only problem is it doesn't cover everything. It does not provide direct checks to Americans, something that Bernie Sanders has said is a non-starter. In fact, he argued, it astounds me how just a few months ago in May, the Democratic House passed a HEROES bill, which was, by the way, $3.4 trillion at the time. What kind of negotiating is that? And I think that he's right. Democrats just keep playing ball with the demands by GOP lawmakers. And so, Jank, why don't you jump in and share your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, first of all, it's kind of interesting. The last line of Bernie Sanders there is more powerful, but it's now being left out of all the stories, which I'm surprised by, because usually I like powerful lines. But he said it's not a negotiation, it's a collapse. And that's exactly right. I mean, if you started at 3.4 trillion, and you wound up at 188 billion. I mean, do I need to do the math for you? Probably this, but it's tiny. That's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage. What is that, like 5% of what you originally asked for? And by the way, what did I used to say about Barack Obama and his establishment enablers? I'd say it wasn't change, it was pocket change. We asked for $1 and we got a nickel. And that's exactly what happened here, almost to the dollar, okay? And so, Anna, one of the things I got out of that press conference is I just figured out who the next president is. And it's not Donald Trump or Joe Biden. It's Joe Manchin. Manchin's now running the place. The people you heard clapping there were Republicans and Democrats. Joe Manchin, nice job on the nickel. Tell everybody that the nickel's so shiny. It's so wonderful, right? And by the way, the press is clapping along. Every article I've read about this is enormously complimentary, and he said it there. You thought we couldn't get bipartisan compromise? No, maybe the mainstream media thought that. We've been telling people, no, you guys will get compromised super easy and quick. You just agree the rich should get everything, right? Right. Hey, look at that, we're all agreed. Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley disagree, but outside of that, we're all agreed the rich should get everything. But we're back to bipartisan compromise. The problem isn't that you can't compromise. It's what you compromise on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the Democratic senators who's a little too willing to compromise in the direction of what Republicans want is the second most powerful Democratic senator, and that's Dick Durbin, who, by the way, is certainly willing to sign on to legislation that does not provide funding for state and local government, which, by the way, if they don't appropriate funding for that, keep in mind that states right now are also suffering from this pandemic, and states are also responsible for their own statewide unemployment program. So if the federal government does not provide the funding that these states desperately need, not only will their public employees suffer, but the people in these states will also suffer because the state is not going to have the funds necessary to pay their unemployment benefits. So it does affect everyone when Democrats agree to cutting funding for state and local government. And so I also want to share a few other details about this legislation and why it's such an issue. The legislation includes 16 weeks of unemployment benefits at $300 per week for jobless Americans, as well as 16-week extensions in base unemployment benefits and the unemployment program for gig workers and independent contractors. I will say it's positive that they're thinking about gig workers and independent contractors who far too often are not covered by certain regulations or certain protections. And so it's good that they're thinking about them. But $300 per week in unemployment benefits is obviously much smaller than what Americans received through the CARES Act, which was $600 a week. I also want to just quickly note that there's no language here about retroactive unemployment benefits, because the fact of the matter is Americans they owe back rent as soon as the moratorium is lifted, and that's thousands and thousands of dollars for many Americans, and that isn't being addressed at all with this ridiculous slim package. I also want to note that there was over $500 billion left over from the CARES Act that remains unspent. What they're planning on doing is using that unspent money in order to fund this relief package. So when you consider that, and then you look at what they're willing to spend on this package, you can see that the newly appropriated money isn't even anywhere close to $748 billion because they're again relying on unspent money through the CARES Act.
By the way, I saw that at the bottom of the fourth article that I read about this. Like almost no one clarifies. By the way, this ain't 908 or 748 billion. It's just 188 billion. The only person who's clarifying it is Bernie Sanders. And so if they quote him on it at the end of one of the articles, you'll see it. Otherwise, you won't see it at all. The media is right back to doing what they used to do before Trump. The Democrats are back to doing what they used to do. I'll only give Biden not a pass, but jury's still out. They claim he's going to do a big coronavirus bill once he gets into office. Okay, and maybe he will. And so if he does, fantastic, then I'm here for it. And we'll give him the leeway to propose that. But right now, as things stand, they're working on the bill right now. And Joe Biden publicly hasn't weighed in at all. I mean, if you're asking who's more in charge, I mean, he beat Bernie Sanders in the primary, but Bernie Sanders is in the fight. Joe Biden right now doesn't appear to be in the fight. The only way that he would be in the fight is if he's quietly behind the scenes telling Joe Manchin, go get him, do that deal. We're gonna get a whole 5%. We're back to my Obama Biden days where we get 5% from Republicans and celebrate. If that's how these next 2 years go, let alone 4 years, they're gonna get slaughtered in the midterms. It's not only terrible policy, but it's also horrific politics.
Exactly, and of course, it would be malpractice to not mention that this bipartisan effort also includes a liability shield for corporations, and it would be retroactive. That means that for these corporations that have cut corners and refuse to protect their employees during this pandemic, they would be cleared of any liability or any lawsuits if this legislation passes. And so think about the workers from the Tyson meatpacking plant who have filed wrongful death lawsuits against Tyson, as a result of their malpractice, their unwillingness to protect workers, dozens of these employees have died. Their lawsuit would be null and void as a result of this legislation passing in the way that it's being proposed right now. And so we're gonna talk a little bit more about how Joe Manchin is very much supportive of that portion of the legislation later in the show, but just understand who this so-called Democrat Joe Manchin really is. He's someone who has taken this opportunity as a Democratic senator to proudly serve as an obstacle to passing legislation that actually benefits the American people, including his own constituents.
Yeah, so I want to say the last two things here because the media mischaracterizes progressives completely. So they say, oh my God, that you guys are not settling for a nickel, you're so radical. No, is there anything we would compromise on? Sure, but we got to get at least close to 50% before we get to a deal. So if it's not that we'd never have a deal, it's just that we don't want terrible deals. If you can't see that obvious point that we're making, you're trying really hard not to see it. And it's weird that the national media tries really hard not to see the truth. Okay, and point number two is Joe Manchin says, oh, well, you guys don't get it. You progressives are such knuckleheads. You can't win in a red state like mine if you're a populist and you're looking out for the people. You have to look out for big business. That's how you win in a red state. Wait a minute, then how's Josh Hawley winning in Missouri as a Republican? And he is saying that people should get the $1,200 checks. And guess what? They love it in Missouri. He beat a corporate Democrat just like you. He beat Claire McCaskill. So they tried your method in Missouri, and Josh Hawley, a right winger, came out and said, no, let's help the people instead. Let's give him $1,200 checks. Let's be a populist. And he won. So look, no matter what you think of Josh Hawley's other positions, and I don't like his other positions, you cannot say that a populist position cannot win in a red state because it just did.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.